You're listening to musician, author, and educator Bobby Borg, breaking down music, business, and marketing basics so they stick.
So hey everybody, my name is Bobby Borg and we're live at USC's Annenberg DIY studio. And my discussion today is the future of sync music licensing. And I'm going to break that down into two parts. Part one will be sync, overflooded or not. And part two, sync future opportunities. I've got a great guest with me today. His name is Dr. Paul Young. Dr. Paul Young is the head of music industry studies at California State University at Chico, a 2019 Grammy-winning musician and member of the John Daversa Big Band, and a former director of licensing and contract administration for Universal Music Group. Doctor.
Paul, of course, like before. Yeah,
how are you, Paul? And I should also say and add to your credentials as well that you were a USC professor for 15 years.
Actually, that's how, I'm sitting at home right now through this last May. I've been here as a music industry professor at the USC Thornton School of Music. And a lot of my students were actually Annenberg students when I was running our music industry minors program and those kinds of things. So, yep, this has also been my home and an alum of USC as well.
Excellent. True Trojan. So before we get started, I just want to put the conversation into context really quick. You know, I know many people that work in sync licensing, and I know many people that actually place their music in film and television and video games, etc. And people will argue about this, but a lot of times people say, you know, at first it presented maybe more of an opportunity, but now maybe it's getting a little bit overcrowded. You know, record companies are maybe more aggressively trying to get placements in film and television, maybe perhaps even to make up money for lost revenue. You know, artists are trying to use it as an opportunity to get exposure. And of course, we have numerous people now that are call themselves song pluggers, and they're trying to push their catalog. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with part number one. So part one, sync, overflooded or not? So Paul, is the sync business overflooded, and if so, why?
Sure. And for your viewers, if they are familiar with the word sync, it's short for synchronization. It's the proper industry terminology of what we say when you're synchronizing music together with any kind of a visual image, and you hit the nail on the head. Film, TV, video games, advertisements, whether they're on any size screen, you know, whether it's the big screen that we go pay $17 for, or it's the one that's on your wall, or it's on your laptop, or it's in your pocket right now on a phone. Anywhere that there's a visual image that uses music. The synchronization of that music together with the visual image is a licensing right. It needs permission of the owners of that music to say, yes, you may put it together with that. So while we were talking about businesses in another segment, or we're talking in the advertising business, or whether we're talking about it for its own sake to be on Netflix or to be on the big screen. That's that kind of licensing. Is it overflooded? Well, I would say no, and I one time thought that would be the case. I was, as you said, I was at Universal Music Group, which is a big Coca-Cola of the record business, and I was in licensing, and the guys that I worked with were in charge of many million a year of making those kinds of placements for money at the time that I was doing it. And if you just look at the timeline of how music looks like in films, you don't really see synchronization of pre-existing recordings that are in movies until you get to about Oliver Stone and Apocalypse Now. Before that, you would have either the music is orchestral and you're not supposed to pay attention to it, but it punches up the scene. Then you get to the music that might be like Annette Funicello or Elvis Presley, and they're kind of doing their dance and being the actor in the thing. Even Frank Sinatra would do it. Until we get to those pre-existing recordings. And then when it's used in that way, the director's thinking there's a nostalgia that I want to tap that when they start to use pre-existing known songs and recordings. And that becomes an opportunity for companies and owners, even individual owners who wrote that music themselves, to make money. So you've already made this thing, and it was made for your purpose of your album or whatever, and now there's a new opportunity. Another business wants to benefit for their product based upon your product. And so in any form of uses, that synchronization becomes a revenue source. But it's not overcrowded because of the revenue source at this point. And if it's overcrowded, there's multiple ways to look at that. Over the last few years, when I've brought that question up to music supervisors, the people that are responsible for the placement of that music there, sometimes creatively, sometimes business, on behalf of the director, when I ask them that, is this overcrowded? They often say no, because look at the voracious appetite of the consumers for streaming content that is visual for Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. Disney is going to have their own version of this fairly soon. HBO and the original content programming, even A&E, why did they get into Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and those kinds of things for the original programming to drive traffic to those particular things. So there's more and more content being produced all the time.
Okay.
So that those streaming services can continue to attract people to continue to pay for that thing that's anywhere from $8 and up, that is not just a music service, but it's actually for visual media purposes. So as long as there's more productions and there are more and more things for us to binge watch, whether they're made for movies. Television is especially the big growth, and video games hasn't gone anywhere.
Right.
You know, there was certainly a growth at one point. It was I think 2009 was a huge year for the video game business. But as we get more and more ads, including on our phone, if you hear music, there's a transaction there, and there is a license, and there's people doing those jobs.
Right.
So there's job opportunities, there's income opportunities. But you said something else about how record companies are chasing it, and publishing companies and that kind of thing. Yes, there are more people after that now.
Right.
When I was in that business, we were looking at it as a for-profit thing. But if you're launching new music as an independent artist, or you're at a record company who just signed an artist, what you're looking for is eyes on the product. And my good friend Tom Rowland, who's the head of synchronization licensing for Universal Music Group, years ago, almost 20 years ago, I heard him saying TV's the new radio. And so what he was trying to say is those eyes on that. You know, if there's millions of people that even watch the 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 p.m. on cable kinds of things, your lowest level kinds of things starts to get millions of people that radio could never get, then 1 or 2% of those people today will be Googling, what was that thing I just heard on that show? And so if they want to find out what that music was about, then you basically have a promotional opportunity, not just an income opportunity.
Okay.
And so for the new bands that are coming about, and that's for something that might be on the CW or plays to a lower demographic, intentionally, when they want kind of indie band music as opposed to orchestral or electronic score or something expensive in a license, they might be going for the song pluggers that are working for the local bands, then they just acquire those and represent those. What they're trying to do at that point is to have the demographic lineup ever since the OC and shows like that. They want that to happen. But that becomes promotional. That's much more like my buddy was saying, TV is the new radio.
Okay.
Sometimes those things will offer nothing to $700 to maximum $1,500 for that music use. And it's not for the money, it's for the exposure. It's so that audience will go, who was that I just heard on that thing?
Okay. All right, great. So, I mean, essentially you answered the second question, which was part 2, sync, future opportunities. And so on that note, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on your answer. And that would be that because there is so much new content being created on things like Hulu and Netflix and so on and so forth, obviously now there are more opportunities for use. And also the fact that a lot of times companies are using music not only for the purpose of generating revenue, but also for promotional purposes, to maybe break an artist, such as you said, music on the radio stations. Pretty much, correct?
Yes. From the music owner's point of view or the music promoter's point of view, that's where most of that perspective I was giving. The thing is that in any past example of this, we can cannibalize one another, you know, to try to get the opportunity. And then there's only so much space on radio or on a playlist, or how many playlists can you create before you've really saturated that market.
Right.
And then what is the pricing of that? If there's a ubiquitous amount of stuff available, we will start to undercut ourselves. That's the way we've always been.
Right.
Because the user of the music often doesn't really see the cost. So that if they've got a ubiquitous amount of stuff available, we can start to drive that price down by simply over-competing and oversaturating with each other.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
but
sure.
the future opportunities, until that reaches a saturation point where there's not a greater amount of retention or new numbers coming into Netflix and Amazon Prime and those kinds of things.
Okay.
There's a fixed number of movies, I think, that we've seen for a little while now of how many are we going to go to the theater to see for the Edwards or the Cineplex kind of companies.
Okay.
And advertising, I don't know that we've really hit the end of that one. You know, the world of the digital realm of advertising, I don't know that it's been tapped, and I don't know that I can really be, again, Madame Cleo that puts on the hat and tells you where that's going to go in the future any better than anyone else can.
Right.
But until we see it, if we could see a saturation point, but I think that we probably won't see an increase in the fees and the kinds of things that we could make. If anything, we'll start to get in each other's way, and that can drive the costs down, but not necessarily the placements.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Excellent
My
information. Essentially, you guys, what we've been talking about today is the future of sync music licensing. And we pretty much discussed two main areas. Part one, sync, is it over flooded or not? And part two, sync, future opportunities. And essentially, I think that what we gathered from all of that is that there's a lot of music out there being licensed, but we haven't really quite reached our saturation point. It looks pretty optimistic with regards to future opportunities with a lot of new programming and internet TV shows and Hulu and Netflix, etc., and advertising and so on and so forth. So I would say overall good news. My name is Bobby Borg, you guys, and what we're trying to do is break down music, marketing, and business basics so that they stick. So be sure to check out the next segment. Peace. So, Paul, thank you very much, sir. It was excellent. Appreciate it. Hey everybody, if you like the videos that you just watched, please be sure to check out my books, Business Basics for Musicians and Music Marketing for the DIY Musician, available at Amazon.com, BobbyBorg.com, or any fine bookseller. Thanks again for watching, and peace.